Hey everybody, this is Vicki Ronchette with Show Dog Prep School. Today we are here for our breeder influence interview with Dan Harrison of Boondox Dachshunds. I usually start out these interviews with how we met, and before Facebook, there was Yahoo groups, and I met Dan through a Dachshund Yahoo group, and I actually got standard long hair Fiona from him years and years ago. And this is called breeder of influence interviews. And Dan, I feel like truly you are one of the most influential dachshund breeders in the country. So I'm super, super, super excited that you're here doing this.
Well, that's what I tried to do growing up is set the example, not exactly what I did, but watch what I did and see what you can see, because everything I produced, I got by breeding my bitches to other people's dogs until finally I got a dog of mine that I liked enough to breed to.
So tell me, who is Boondocks? Obviously, I know it's you. Is it anybody else? Did you start it by yourself? How did who is this kennel?
It's mine. I started myself. I had shown ponies, I had shown chickens, and then I started showing. I was going to get an Afghan hound, but we had always had dachshunds, and I decided to get a smooth dachshund because that's what I wanted. And I got one that finally needed a major to finish. I bred her. She produced a group winner and everything, but um, when she was when the first puppy was about 4 years old, she developed uh, epilepsy, and I lost
Oh,
her. And so I had to like close down. But in the meantime, I had bought my second one, which was from D. Hutchinson, and D. Hutchinson is my foundation. D. Hutchinson, and when I
Rose
finished my
Farm.
first, yeah, for my first one there, she gave me a long hair bitch, and the long hair girls that I had really set the tone for what I did when I started breeding.
So did you mentioned having other types of animals that you showed. Did you grow up in a dog showing breeding family, or was it more livestock and like a farming type family?
Livestock. If I could do one thing, I would I would love to have dogs that I took to the state fair. That was my dream every year, was to get to the state fair and show there. But you know what I mean, when you quit having them and you started showing, other breeds, you lost that ability. But the ponies are what really taught me type. The chickens, every chicken is different. I mean, there are like 200 varieties of chickens, and everyone is totally different. And so
That's wild.
you learn that by watching and growing them up, because you think, well, how does it happen? And you just see it. It's just like they're there, and they just turn into that animal. And
Hmm.
that was always my goal.
So that sounds hard. That sounds like it's harder to pick which chickens to keep. And
It is.
I mean, do you have to rely on the breeding and just be like, I know this is going to be good?
Yeah, I always, I mean, in everyone we did, I always became really involved closely with the breeder, listen to their advice. I mean, no matter how stupid, you know what I mean? No matter,
Yeah.
no matter how stupid I thought it was, there's a reason they thought that way, and
Right.
you have to buy onto that reason to get your kennel to move. And so that's what I always did.
You've always handled your own dogs, right? For the
Yeah.
most part?
Hmm. When I started, and then when I started showing, um, I showed my own dogs. My first ones were ones I showed myself. Choo Choo is one I showed myself. But for bigger shows, I would use Handler Heller. And Handler
Mhm.
Heller was an important influence for me. And whatever she taught me about the breed, and this was back in the late 70s, whatever she taught about the breed was correct, because she was producing dogs that like you could really only dream about. I mean, they were so good. And so that's who was my fault. And then I started helping her. I took her to dog shows. I like when we went to Houston, Texas for DCA. I drove them down there. I stayed with them in the kennel. They got to go to their family and meet them and stay there for a week. And I stayed in the kennel, took care of the dogs. And I mean, I just really had a great time with her. And by doing the things that helped them, I felt I was repaying them for all the things they taught me.
Yeah. And she was a handler, but also a dachshund breeder.
Yeah, she started out as a dachshund breeder. She was a
primarily standard longs.
Yeah, standard longs. She came over from Germany, and always had dachshunds there, and then they got a dachshund here. And at first they had dogs that weren't quite as good as they could, and then the light bulb came on, and she started getting dogs from Mary Howell, and that's set the tone. And when she got dogs from Mary Howell, she was able to cross them back and forth, and the line, her line was set.
Yeah. So I don't need you to tell me this so much because I love the breed and I know about the breed, but I do want to ask you to tell us about the breed and what got you interested in them. And I think it's interesting that a lot of us dabble and have, but more than one variety. But you've actually been super successful in all varieties. So I'm just interested in hearing, like, you tell us about the breed, what you like which you like most, if you have a favorite variety, size, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, when I started, I just had when I was growing up, I just had standard smooths. That's what I had. And that's what I loved. And I loved everything about them. I loved their personality. I loved them. Um, and then when I finished my first champion, Dee sent me a long hair bitch who said, "Oh, we're going to celebrate. You get this long hair bitch." Well, it wasn't really a gift because she had a big knot in her tail, and there's no way Dee could ever show her. And so, but I thought, but the minute she came there and I opened the crate, she was just the most beautiful bitch I had ever seen.
Was that blackberry?
That was Blackberry Buff, or Lardy as we called her.
I remember you
And
telling me about the kink tail, but she
yeah,
never produced it, right?
she never produced it. And then I mean, she was so beautiful, and I'm thinking, what am I, with that kink tail, I can't breed her because I'll be producing all these kink tails. Finally, it got to the point where I had bred my smooth twice, and I needed another. I was going to breed another one, and so I thought, well, I'll try this one, and I bred Lardy, who was again all Bayard Deldox breeding, and I bred her to Champion Beast Javelin de Bayard Romo, and finished 8 champions out of the litter.
Wow.
And that's sort of like, I mean, before the first one I finished 1 champion, the second one I finished 3, and so when you finish 8 in one litter, maybe I'm starting to find the right path here.
Yeah, exactly.
And during that time, Dee had a niece of Lardy called Country Girl, who was beautiful. I mean, she was really beautiful. Dead level top line, head, tail. But when she showed her, every time she would show her in the ring, she would just like collapse and go flat and with her head on the floor. I mean, literally, that's all she could do. And she said, "I'm not showing her anymore." I was out at Westminster at the time. And she said, "I'm not showing her anymore. Somebody else will have to do it." I said, "Well, I'd be glad to. I'll take her and see what I can do."
Yeah.
And I did. And it took about an hour to I realized, oh, every time you pull on the lead, she thinks her head's getting popped off and she hits the floor. So what I did was I just showed her completely loose lead. I never put the lead on her at all. She
Mm-hmm.
just showed like a show pony. I mean, she was just beautiful to gait. And I bred her the same way I bred Lardy. I bred it first to champion javelin to Bayard, and then the second was my most memorable dog was Handler's Last Special. He never won DCA. He was never like the big winner, but to me, when I saw him move, he just like filled my eye. That was exactly like I wanted mine to look.
Mm-hmm.
So I bred them to him. And from him, from Giraffe and my bitches, I got all these bitches that produced. I mean, the mothers produced beautifully, but
Mm-hmm.
what the daughters produced was even better. But they only produced bitches. They did not produce good show dogs. I mean, they always produced show bitches that could
Mm-hmm.
live everywhere, but not show dogs. And but
That's
anyway,
interesting, isn't it? All of them?
yeah, not I did not finish one Giraffe's son.
Wow.
All the litters I had, and but what they produced was uh, one country girl bred to Giraffe, bred her to my dog PJ, which is the first dog of mine I ever bred to,
Mm-hmm.
and that produced Treasure and Shoney. And they pretty much, I mean, they're the one that set the type. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
talk about the Boondox type. That's when it came in. Whereas PJ had the type, his mother
Mm-hmm.
had the type, but it wasn't till they came along, and you just saw when you just got him out and put him on the lead, you just see their like body swell, and they just were like perfect to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I get real sentimental talking about those because those are two I still really miss. So
Yeah. Yeah. Did
mhm.
you like living with them too? Were they like nice dogs to just be around as well as being great show dogs?
Yeah, but by the time I mean I lived with them for a while, and then when you have like 8 to 10, 12 bitches, you think I got to get a kennel. You know what I mean? Because you can't have that many people and many dogs running in your house.
So you mentioned, so my next question is your foundation animals. And so basically, Lardy, she was kind of it. And then the country girl who was she a sister?
No, she was out of Lardy's sister produced Country Girl, and
Oh,
so I
okay.
had the aunt Lardy and the niece Country Girl, bred them the same way. So I had two different lines of Lardy, two different lines of Country Girl, and
Hmm.
you just breed them back and forth. You breed
Right.
them back and forth, and they was what I used. I mean, that's what I used. All my early breedings were that.
Well, my
And
next question is tell me if you have a breeding like a formula or like a formula because it's interesting in dachshunds I felt like I was taught a formula which is line breed, go out, come back, and then I got Lauchen, which is a rare breed, and it's like, oh no, you can't do that because everything's related right back there, like a generation or a couple generations behind what you can see on the pedigree. So do you have a formula like what you did that you stuck with?
yeah, basically, I only breed. I mean, when you start with dachshunds, they tell you to get the best bitch you can ever afford, and breed that one.
Yeah.
And that is something so true. You cannot disagree with that ever. That's what you have to have, the best bitch ever. But all these dogs, there are certain things they have to have, and my first one that I really had was Choo Choo, my Lionel daughter. She was so Gira bred. I don't know if you know Giras. They were a kennel in Southern California.
Well, I
They were,
heard about them. I've heard about the name. Now,
yeah,
she was a smooth, right?
She was a smooth.
Okay.
And at that point, I didn't know what you had to do. I mean, the first thing I have to do is keep that forechest. If they have the forechest, you don't ever want to lose that. You cannot lose that forechest, because if you lose that, you don't have a dachshund anymore. And no matter how much I talk about that to other people, they all think they do. And trust me, most of them don't.
Like they have it and then they lose it, or they just don't have it at
They
the end.
don't
Like how really?
Yeah, I mean, and you can tell. I mean, you can tell it's obvious they don't
Right.
have it.
Yeah.
But so when I always did, I always, I always, I took this bitch. This was a Lionel daughter, and I bred her to one of the Moffat's dogs, Moffat's Georgie.
Mm-hmm.
And Moffat's Georgie was a full brother to my epitome of smooths was Moffat's Harvest. He was just superb. He was the best ever. And but these guys had these huge four chests, huge. And I thought, I'm going to see if I can get them. So I bred them the first litter. I got Chucky Bunyan, who turned out to be the top smooth producer for a long time down in Wow. And I got Country Pride, who I sold to people in Iowa. And she was a multiple specialty winner, got specialty best of breeds and everything. And
But didn't you sell Chucky Bunyan?
Yeah, I sold him as a puppy.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, Thelma begged me to sell him because, well, that's a whole other story because Thelma and I were very close friends. We were just like totally, I mean, I stayed at her house all the time when I was there. When I was ever go to Michigan, I always stayed at her house. And to me, it was just amazing to sit in that house and see them bring in those, room after room of dachshunds, and all of them were beautiful. Because you know what? Until you see that, you don't understand these people that say, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to breed to this male of mine I bred, but it's not that good." Well, if it's not that good, why breed to it?
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
That's the kind of thing. Why? But anyway, Thelma had the guy Richard Bunyan. I forget what the guy's name was, but he had Cassie Bunyan. He owned Mergen's Cassie Bunyan. And he was a big winner, won the DCA, he won everything, and he was winning all over the place. And she said, "Oh, you have to sell him to him. He wants him. So I thought, well, if he does, I will. And so I did sell him, and he showed him once, got a specialty variety from the puppy class, and then got out of dogs, and he wound up with John Thompson.
Oh, okay. Got it. Wow, it's so cool hearing about all these stories from these different ones. So basically, now then we complicate things because we obviously have a breed that has multiple varieties and we can breed in and out. And you did do back and forth, right? You did breed your longs with your smooths and stuff, right?
Yeah, and basically you have to have a reason. You know what I mean? You can't just do it just to breed them.
Yeah.
There should be a reason. And my reason for ever breeding the smooths was, well, I hate to, we had a really serious problem in the smooths back in the late 70s, the early 70s to the 70s. Because we had these dogs that would be perfect. They would be happy, temperamental, beautifully tempered dogs, and they have their season, and after the season, they were so nuts nobody could touch them.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
literally, you could not ever show them. But people would get busy and they'd work and they'd work and they'd work and they'd get them, they'd finish him, and oh, they were so happy. And then I finally said to some people, I said, "Why are you finishing this dog? Because you're never, if you breed, you're going to breed that same temperament."
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like you're not
Yeah.
you're not getting away from it. And So, so if the temperament was that bad, if that ever showed up, it was something I would not deal with. I had it originally in my first litter. I had a couple of puppies like that, but I did not want that again because I didn't want to have something that I kept for 9, 10 months and then it went crazy and you couldn't show it.
You're right.
So it was just not, it's just not worth it for me because I mean, I was breeding a lot of dogs, you know what I mean? Not a lot of dogs at that point, you know, like 3 or 4 litters a year, which was,
Yeah.
would be a lot of dogs. But by the end of the year, by the time the 80s through the 90s, I was breeding a lot more than that. But you know what I mean? It's like you don't want it to waste your time on dogs that aren't going to be part of your breeding program.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And anyway, so any ones that I felt had bad temperaments, I didn't show.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't show up all the time because you could breed to dogs and it would look like they'd be perfect.
Yeah.
And it never was. You know what I mean? It's like they never were. I had I mean, Carol and Ufa Bray were really good friends of mine. And they had a dog that I loved. I loved him much more than Mr. T. He was called Bray House Big Boy. He was so beautiful. I mean, just beautiful. And I thought, well, I'm going to breed to him. And I bred to him. And I got through, I think I finished 3 or 4 of them. And then I realized as soon as they hit and it was like that bad temperament was there. So those are the ones, if you get stuck with them and you have something you really, really love. Before that, I didn't have anything. But once I had PJ, he was something you could breed anything to. I mean, you could breed him to anything and you were going to get top quality puppies that would finish in a flash and look at win from everywhere from, you know, the DCA to the garden, anywhere.
And did he give that temperament to babies?
No.
I mean, did he help those sharp temperaments and the smooths to?
Yes, because once you bred to him, you never got that temperament again. But you know what? I can't say breed to him because most people don't have that dog to breed to. I mean, you know what I mean? If you had him, you could breed, you know, all the problems to him.
Right.
You know, but it's going to show up eventually somewhere.
Right.
And so that was the main reason I breed him. And it worked out best for me. And this is like one of the main reasons I did it was I had this one smooth bitch. I had this one bitch called Sunrise's Martha, who was a group winner. It was something I had sold puppies to. So puppies to got people and they bred. And I got her back and she was just the most beautiful thing. I mean, I showed her a lot, probably too long, but I showed her because I liked showing her. And then I bred her and I had the bitch that was so perfect. She just was like, you could stack her and I mean, the judges couldn't put up. And I was showing her one weekend and it was like 8, 9 months old. And I showed her on Saturday and Annie Clark was judging. And she gave her best of variety over all the specials. I mean, it was just like a huge thrill. And I was I got the winner right now. And then she went into season that night and I never could show her again. She was so freaky. She was just the worst ever. And I'm thinking, I can't lose that quality. You know what I mean? It was something that I didn't want to lose that quality. And I would tell everybody, don't breed to them. And I mean, but I have bred to them. But I had the dogs that could do it. The problem is most people do not have those type of stud dogs.
Right.
And anyway, I bred her and I bred her. She had 4 puppies. And one of them was Ipsy Pipsy and the other one is Ipso Facto. And they were just ones that, I mean, They won everywhere. Ipsy Pipsy was best opposite at DCA 2 years in a row.
That was Fiona's mother.
Yeah.
That I had an Ipsy
Yeah.
Pipsy daughter.
And you know it, you never had that, you never had it either. You know what I mean? It's like it never showed up.
Right.
So yeah, and that's why I like that picture of her. I've used it a couple of times because there's something about that picture that just like I love.
Oh,
You know
that
what? There's
makes me,
certain dogs that you have that just catch your eye, and
yeah.
she's one I always pick out.
Oh, that makes me happy. So Ipsy Pipsy and ipso facto, they were out of the one bitch that got squirrely and PJ, right?
Mhm. And people wonder why you do that. Well, it's not because you're wanting to get long hairs down the line,
Right.
but it's that you want to get the quality that's there in the long hairs. Because in all the time that I've been showing dogs, I've never had a long haired dachshund that was in the least bit squirrely ever.
Mm-hmm.
They've always had excellent temperaments, and they pass it on.
Yeah. Are the longs your favorite? They are, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say because I love the smooth, and but when you wind up with certain ones, like my favorite, I mean, I hate to say this, my favorite of all time was Treasure. She was the
Mm-hmm.
one that the minute I saw, I mean, the minute I saw her as a baby puppy in a little X pen in Kentucky, I walked over. I mean, what happened was I was supposed to meet Martha Grantham down there, and she
Mm-hmm.
was bringing up the puppy. And the reason I got this is I was supposed to get a bitch from the first litter, but there was one bitch puppy, and I said, I'm not going to take your only bitch puppy from that litter. There were like 8 or 9
Uh-huh.
dogs and one bitch puppy. And I said, I'm not going to take it. I said, I'll take the next one. And so anyway, they finally did, and I finally get down there, and all the way down, Sissy's telling her, "Oh, he won't take that one. He'll probably like that other little bitch better."
Uh-huh.
And it's like they have it in a big X pen, and I get out of my truck, and I walk up over to it, and I just reach down and I said, "This is mine," and I pick her up, and that was it. I mean, no questions or anything. That one was mine. And it was like that was like one of my best moments ever is picking out a dog. That one.
Yeah, because it was just so there, so easy and clear, and there
Yeah,
she
I
is.
mean, and there were good ones in the litter, but not as good as her.
So my next question is, who were some of your favorite dogs that carry your kennel name? And that is one of them, right? Treasure.
Yeah, I mean, well, Treasure. I've bred her once, and I didn't get exactly what I wanted. But then I had Sting, who was a bigger dog, rangier looking, taller, and
Mm-hmm.
Treasure's really low in the live station. And I bred those two, and the first litter, I think there were 4 champions in it out of 5 puppies. And then the next one, there were 2 puppies, both champions. And Forrest Gump was one of the puppies. He was just perfect. And Fortunate Son was the other one, and again, he was really good.
He was used a lot, right?
Uh,
Yeah.
and then Polo is the one I kept, Polo. And the funny thing about it is, again, I don't know what happened, but in Treasure's litters, all the males were top producers that produced lots of champions, and the females never produced a bitch that could never produce one that could finish. None of them.
Isn't that crazy how that just happens?
Yeah, I mean, and you know what I mean. You're trying to think what happened, and it was in 2 different litters. I mean, there were 2 different litters here.
Right. And it's just
And then of course PJ was one of my favorites. Martha was one of my favorites. Danielle, the Wire, was one of my favorites.
My guess would have been PJ if I had to guess.
Well, the sad thing about PJ is when he was born, his bite was so far off. It was just unbelievable. It was just, I mean, literally, I mean, it was like that. It was like that. The bite lower, his upper jaw stuck over like that much on it. I mean,
Mhm.
you'd look at it and you think, there's no way that's ever, it's never going to get better. And I tried desperately to give him away to everybody.
Wow.
I mean, literally everybody. I said, here, I'll, take him. I mean, I'm in charge of anything. I was just wanting him to be gone because he was so beautiful to look at
And it
that
was heartbreaking.
it was heartbreaking because, you know what? You've been breeding along and you get some that are almost that way. And
Yeah.
then finally he came along and he was everything I wanted. I can't stand him. You know what I mean? I can't stand looking at him. No one would take him. So I wound up with him. I put him in my kennel. And this was like as a puppy. And finally, when he got about 6, 7 months old, I looked at his bite again and it was perfect. It had closed and it was perfect. Everybody thinks I did something to change it. And I mean, and that's something I don't do because when I do that, am I fooling myself?
Right.
No, you know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
just like
Yeah,
I'm
you
just
didn't want to deal with it to begin with. You sure
yeah,
aren't gonna
yeah.
fix it and then make more like that.
Yeah. I mean, do I want to do that so that everybody will use him and get that problem? No. I mean,
Right.
that's not what I'm here for.
Yeah.
And but anyway, he was so good that I thought, well, there's nothing that's going to beat him. And so we started showing him, and I mean, I think he got 6 or 7 best of breeds. And we were going along, and then his puppy started showing. And then it was all over because
Yeah.
they beaten him. I mean, you know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what can you do?
But that's good, right? I mean, that's what you
Yeah,
want. You're hoping to
that's
have
what
them
you want.
make
I mean,
better and better and better.
mhm.
Who are some of your favorite dogs outside of your kennel?
Well, I'll tell you the ones that I think are my main dogs that are like the epitome of what I want them to look like. And that's in Smooths, it was Moffat's Harvest because he was the most beautiful dog to watch ever. He was just like, there was no way. He was just perfect to look at. And of course, that's when I was starting out. So I probably wouldn't like you as much now,
Mhm.
but I like talking about it. And then in long hairs, I had champion Del Doc's Rolls Royce. I think he was twice winners. He was twice best of variety and best of breed at DCA. And he was just the most beautiful I had ever seen.
Mhm.
Giraffe is right there. Giraffe is one that was right there. He's something that like he's exactly what I want him to look like. And
Yeah.
and you can see how because PJ is a giraffe grandson.
Mhm.
Treasure and Shoney are giraffe grandkids. So you can see that look still came there,
Right.
in there. And then in Wires, the one dog I've seen, and this is a more recent one. Um, the one from I can't think of his name. His name. The one that won the group with Bobby at the Garden. Hmm. Oh well.
Recently or a long time ago?
In 90s, so it's not recent. It's
Okay.
recently to me, but not recently
Uh-huh.
to everybody. Yeah, Shag, Starbuck,
Oh,
Starbuck.
I know who you're talking about.
Bon Appetit. And it was something like that. But it was like, because I remember going seeing him in the ring, and it was just like amazing. I just like loved everything about him.
Are you breeding at all anymore? Do you have any
No,
dogs over there right now?
no.
How do you feel about that? That's kind of
Well,
heartbreaking to me.
well, the sad thing is, when I got my divorce, there was just no way I could keep the dogs I did. You know what I mean? I had gotten down relatively to nothing, and uh, and it's obvious that it's not good for anybody. You know what I mean? It's not going to be there for everybody else to take advantage of. So I just decided not to do it.
Yeah. So do you ever think about getting a dog again?
No.
No.
You know what? I invested so much time and effort into the hobby
Mhm.
that it's hard to imagine going back and starting and doing it again.
Oh, I know. Can you imagine?
No.
So, oh, God, I just feel like I'm so excited when we're done here. I'm going to go pull out some of my books and look up some of those old names again because, I got my first show dog in 95 and, it was like before Amazon and stuff. So I had collected all these Dachshund books from, I have stacks and stacks of books that I would go through and look at the pictures and all of these names. Like I can remember Traveling Man and I can remember the Moffat ones that you're talking about, like Harvest and just all these dogs. It's like, it's so cool to hear like you were there when that happened. And I've read about them and, looked at them in pedigrees and stuff like that. So
Well,
it's a trip.
well, like Moffat's Harvest. I mean, he was sold to a a place that really didn't have a lot of Moffat dogs in it. It was Ed Jenner's Nolan Farm Kennels,
Hmm.
and but they bred him. Larry Krebs bred him to one of his bitches, and there was this bitch called Marlar of Ramral of Marlar, and she was the one that they came home and they bred. They bred her. She was a Moffat's. She was a Marlar was a Moffat's Harvest daughter,
Hmm.
and they bred her to the one of Janine Sadinsky's dogs that replaced Harvest,
Hmm.
and Kay Ladd bought that bitch as her foundation bitch. So even though
Oh,
he's not there, trust me, when I saw Juliet, I said, that's a Moffat's Harvest. That's what Moffat's Harvest puppies would look like because she had captured the essence of it, even though she hadn't seen him.
yeah.
But
When people like when I'm helping people who are learning about showing dogs or looking at pedigrees and stuff, and I tell them that they should, look and find their ideal dog. Like, what's your ideal? Because you want to have something to breed to and to look at. And my favorite is Juliet. Like, I just thought she was amazing and spectacular and just so and I did get to see her at nationals and being shown and it to me she was really like wow. I mean that was
well,
pretty amazing.
do you want me to tell you my sad story with Juliet? Is
Definitely.
I always wanted to win to judge her because I loved her. Because when she was in the classes, I beat her with 5 different class bitches because she threw that one leg and Kay couldn't control it. So every time you show, you what, and every time the judges just go, and you think, bingo, yeah. But I loved her. And then I never got a show to her. And then finally at the end of her career, it was like in November of the year previous, and she was just going to be shown one more time. And I was doing a specialty in Pennsylvania, and Kay and the blonde girl that used to work for Carlos. They came all the way out to Pennsylvania to show to
Oh,
me, and they had horrible trouble, and she was so bad, and she was just like miserable and everything. And I'm thinking, oh, I was really glad because I knew she was there, so I was thinking yes. And and I thought, oh no, we can't do it. But she finally got up enough energy that she
oh.
looked good, and so I was able to give her a breed. But it wasn't easy.
Oh, nice, nice. I do want to just also tell people about the Dachshund History Project too, because that's something that's still active, right? Like the website and the Facebook page where you're just talking about old dogs and, sharing information. And there's a lot of stuff I like on there about structure and anatomy and, just breeding practices and stuff I think is super valuable. I think it's too bad there's not more of that in other breeds.
Yeah, I mean, we never had it, and it's like at the end, there were a lot of people that started it when we started Dachshund History Project, but now more or less people have just like drifted off, and I'm still the only one. So every day I still get out. I get out 3 or 4 ones and talk about them. And
Hmm.
when I talk about them, I try to tell what I like about the dogs
Hmm.
and how to what I would do to breed them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You try to do that, and most of the time, um, as far as breeding them, most dogs are dogs I'd never breed to. You know what I mean? It's like,
Hmm.
and I don't say that because, well, I'm not going to cut anybody's down, because,
Yeah.
but most of them are not dogs I would have bred to because I kept both of mine were like narrowly bred. The smooths and the longs were narrowly bred and really intensely line bred.
Hmm.
But, um, but anyway, but I do like to give my opinion about the dogs and what a good thing I like about them, and what I can pass over and what I can't. And one of
Yeah.
the things that like irritates me so much is like, oh, everybody is so nuts on top lines. They can have perfect dead level top lines, and I'm thinking that's such a mistake. You know what I mean? Because I've had some that just did not have good top lines.
Yeah.
Is it correctable? Yeah, just bring them to one with a good top line.
Yeah.
But most people cannot. They look at the top line a little saggy, or it looks a little off or something, and they're just like totally freaked out. And to me,
Yeah.
it's just like relax, relax. All it takes is a breathing, and it's fine. But you know what? You can't tell people most of that kind of stuff. But
Is that you mentioned earlier? Like, I feel like as breeders, we have like deal breakers, right? And I feel like in dachshunds, I don't have any inspiration. Like, I don't want to be a judge, but I do like to judge like matches and sweepstakes and stuff. And I find that like my deal breaker, well, there are some things, like I want to see pretty, I want a nice outline, but I feel like I cannot forgive like bad ribbing and keel. And I think it looks bad. I just think it just looks weak and bad. You mentioned earlier about forechest. I mean, do you have deal breakers? Like if there's like forechest is one of the things for you. That has to be there, right?
it has to be there. But we're getting to the point now where often it isn't. And you know what? I guess we're going to have to get used to that because it used to be. I had never given one with no four chest like major wins, but it's getting really hard to keep that going. You know what I
Oh,
mean? It's getting
yeah.
really hard.
That's sad. Like, I mean, do you think it's and do you think that's in all varieties? Because, like, I mean, you could argue that you could hide it, you could feel it for sure, but you could somewhat hide it in a long hair if you had enough hair up there. But, like, in a smooth, like, it just looks weird, right? Like, if you just see a smooth dachshund from the side with no prosternum, like, that's crazy.
Well, I just wish it were crazy, but I mean, it's something you really got to watch out for.
Yeah.
And to me, if and no matter, I mean, and it sounds hard for me to say this because I say it every time I'm talking about dogs. I says, if they don't have the forechest, if they don't have the angulation, and that's not set where it's supposed to be at the neck set, with the neck coming right up there, with the right underneath them, you don't have a dachshund.
Right.
But most time, but and no matter how much you tell them that, they all think they do. I mean, you know what I mean? And that's the hard thing. That's the hard thing to get past, because they all send me these pictures of their dogs and said, "Oh, it's got this and this and this and this," and I'm saying, "No, it really doesn't." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I never say it. You know, I said, "Oh, that's nice." You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You can't argue with them, because when you argue with them, all you do is make an enemy that hates you.
Right. Right.
Right?
Exactly.
If you try to tell them what's right, you just make an enemy.
Yeah. Well, Dan, thank you so much. This was so fun. I really had a good time talking to you. I'd love to have you back to talk more just about breeding stuff because I could do this all night long. And I
Yeah,
can't wait to go pull out my dachshund books and like look up some of the dogs we talked about.
yeah. Well, really, I mean, really, when you think about all those dogs I started out with, no matter what they say, they're still the most important. It's like when I saw PJ, when I got PJ's pedigree, and I printed it out, several generations, and I saw where all his quality came from, and it was just this Bayard La Tartare, who was one of Mary Howell's first long-haired champions after the crossing with the snooze.
Hmm.
That was the one that set the type and everything. And he didn't sire all that many champions. He was an ROMX producer, but every producer became super producers.
Hmm.
All of his kids were nice dogs, but they became the super producers that produced him in their
Hmm.
offspring. And that's what.
That's really
And,
cool.
and you know what? And all that bred to, PJ had 34 crosses to Bayard La Tartare in his pedigree. So
Wow.
that's something you have to really realize, because people are saying, "Oh, you can't line breed, you can't line breed." Well, yeah, you can, but
Yeah.
most people don't realize they're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because if you go back far enough, I mean, you're likely to find something, right?
Mhm.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this. This will be saved on Show Dog Prep School's page. If anybody drops in and asks any questions and you happen to miss it, I will tag you so that they can get that from you. Thank you so much for being here, Dan. I super appreciate it.
Sure, and anytime you want me back, just let me know. You know
Good to
me, I
talk to
always
you
like to talk
again.
about dachshunds.
I know. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too.